Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This audio uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Today we're diving deep into Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, a novel that keeps people talking even decades after it was published. I mean, even if you haven't read it, you've probably heard about its impact. So what was it about The Bell Jar that drew you to it?
It's got to be that raw honesty, the way Plath just captures that feeling of being trapped, not just by societal pressures, but also your own mind. And it's so relevant today, even though it was written back in the 1950s.
Absolutely. So we meet Esther Greenwood. She's this brilliant young woman who wins an internship at a really prestigious fashion magazine in New York City. Sounds pretty glamorous, right? Yeah. But she's dealing with all these expectations, especially for a woman in that era.
Yeah, think about it. 1950s America, where being a woman basically meant one path, marriage, kids, the whole domestic thing. But Esther's ambitious and talented. So that pressure cooker environment really starts to get to her.
Yeah, and that tension plays out in her relationships too.
Yeah.
Right, like with Doreen, she's that rebellious free spirit. And then there's Lenny, the sophisticated type. Esther's kind of drawn to them, but also a little repelled by their lifestyles.
It's almost as if she's trying on these different roles, Like
Mm-hmm.
Doreen's life seems thrilling, but also kind of empty. And then settling down, like Lenny's wife totally fills her with dread.
Right.
And then we can't forget Constantine the interpreter. He represents that intellectual success that Esther finds appealing, but it still doesn't fill that void for her.
It's like she's constantly measuring herself against these ideals and always coming up short. No wonder she feels so lost and alienated. And then things get even darker as her mental health deteriorates. Plath doesn't hold back here. We see her becoming fixated on the Rosenberg's execution, like she can't escape those images.
And oh my gosh, that fig tree analogy. Each fig is a different path in life, but she's just agonizing over the choice, knowing she'll lose all the others. It's like decision paralysis on steroids.
Oh, totally. And then there's that powerful image of the bell jar, right? It's
Yeah.
this symbol of feeling trapped and suffocated, cut off from the world.
The bell jar becomes a metaphor for Esther's mental state. Everything's distorted, muffled, distant. It's such a strong image that speaks to how isolating mental illness can be.
Right. But even in these dark moments, Plath weaves in these flashes of dark humor.
Yeah.
Like Doreen biting Lenny's earlobe at a dance, or that scene with the bellhop practically demanding a tip for carrying her suitcase.
Yeah.
Those moments add another dimension to the story, don't they?
It's almost jarring at times, but it works. It adds depth and prevents the story from being overwhelmingly bleak. You see her wit and intelligence even in the midst of her struggles.
Yeah, it definitely makes her character more relatable, more human.
Yeah.
And then things take a serious turn when Esther attempts suicide. This is where Plath's own experiences with mental illness really come through.
The way she describes her attempts and her stays in institutions, it's incredibly raw and honest. It gives us a glimpse into what mental health treatment was like back then and how much has changed since then.
It's a tough part of the book for sure, but it also shows Plath's courage in sharing such a personal story. It's still so relevant today as we continue to figure out mental health care.
Yeah, we've come a long way, but there's still so much work to do.
Definitely. Now, throughout her journey, Esther encounters several characters who play really important roles in her life, some positive, some negative. Like Buddy Willard, the medical student she briefly dates. He kind of represents that conventional path she feels pressured to follow. I'm curious, did any of the characters particularly stand out to you?
Buddy's an interesting one because he's got that stability and success that Esther's supposed to want, but she finds him so suffocating and superficial, and he can't really grasp her struggles, which just makes her feel even more isolated. And then there's Joan, a fellow patient who seems to understand Esther's despair, but their relationship takes a dark turn, which I think reflects those complex female friendships and the pressures women face.
Yeah, Joan's story is so tragic. She ends up succumbing to those same pressures that torment Esther. It really shows the devastating consequences of those expectations and the lack of support for women struggling with mental health.
It's a reminder that we can never truly know what someone else is going through, even when we think we understand their struggles.
Exactly. It just underscores the need for compassion and empathy, especially when dealing with mental illness. But on a brighter note, there's Dr. Nolan, Esther's psychiatrist at the private hospital. She seems to mark a turning point in Esther's journey.
Yeah, Dr. Nolan represents a different approach to mental health treatment, one that focuses on listening and understanding and empowering the patient. She challenges those traditional methods Esther encountered earlier, offering a more humane and individualized approach to therapy.
Yes. In those sessions with Dr. Nolan, Esther starts to confront her demons and unpack all those societal expectations weighing her down. It's like she's finally given permission to just be herself, without judgment or pressure. And as she goes through this, we see glimpses of hope. Her resilience and her desire to heal start shining through. She even starts writing again, which feels like a huge step forward.
That's so symbolic. Reclaiming her creativity and her sense of self. Even in those dark times, that spark of life can still flicker. It speaks to the power of self-expression and finding outlets that allow us to connect with ourselves.
Totally. However, like life itself, the novel's ending is ambiguous. Esther is released seemingly on the road to recovery. But there's this lingering question. Is she truly free from the bell jar? Or could it descend again?
That's the brilliance of Plath's writing, you know. There are no easy answers or neat resolutions. Instead, she leaves us with uncertainty. It makes us reflect on the complexity of mental illness and the ongoing process of healing. It's an ending that stays with you.
It definitely makes you think. It's almost like Plath is inviting us to consider our own bell jars. Those societal pressures and internal struggles that can trap us in our own distorted realities. What do you think is the biggest takeaway from the bell jar for you personally?
For me, it's about recognizing and challenging those invisible forces that shape our lives. Societal expectations, cultural norms, even our own internalized beliefs. We can question those influences and choose a more authentic path.
Powerful stuff. It's a reminder that even when we feel trapped and suffocated, there's always hope and a way forward, even if it's not always clear or easy.
Absolutely. And that's what makes the bell jar so timeless. It speaks to that universal human experience of finding our place in the world, breaking free from limitations, and embracing our true selves.
So beautifully said. Well, for any listeners who haven't experienced the bell jar firsthand, we highly recommend giving it a read. Plath's writing is captivating. Her characters are unforgettable, and the story will definitely stay with you long after you finish the last page.
It's both challenging and rewarding. It offers insights into the human psyche and the complexities of mental health that are just as relevant today as they were back then.
Totally agree. We've actually provided a link in the show notes where you can buy a copy of The Bell Jar, and using our link helps support our channel so we can keep creating more deep dives like this and bring you more insightful book analyses.
Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That way you won't miss any of our future episodes, where we explore a whole range of books, from classics to contemporary bestsellers, all with the goal of nourishing your mind on the go.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into The Bell Jar, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with?
I hope they're inspired to challenge those invisible forces that might be holding them back, whether it's societal expectations or cultural norms, or even just their own internal beliefs. It's important to remember that they have the power to choose their own path.
Well said. And remember, even when you feel trapped or suffocated, like you're under that bell jar, there's always hope. There's always a way forward, even if it's not always easy or clear.
It's heartbreaking. You know, Joan's fate, it really shows how these external pressures can have such devastating consequences, especially when coupled with the internal struggles of mental health.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that we need to be kinder to ourselves and each other. We never truly know what someone else is going through. But speaking of internal struggles, Esther's relationship with Buddy Willard adds another layer of complexity to her journey. He represents that conventional path she feels pushed towards, but she ultimately finds him stifling.
Buddy embodies that societal ideal of success, you know, the doctor, the stable future. But Esther realizes that fitting into that mold would mean sacrificing her own identity and aspirations. It's like she's trying to force herself into a life that just isn't meant for her.
Exactly. And it's interesting how their relationship highlights the limitations of traditional gender roles, even for someone like Buddy who seems to benefit from them. He can't truly understand Esther's struggles, and his inability to empathize further isolates her. Have you come across any reflections on these changing gender roles in your own reading?
It's a recurring theme, isn't it? How those expectations can be so damaging for both men and women. And in The Bell Jar, it's not just the men who embody these societal pressures. There's Joan, who initially seems like a kindred spirit, someone who understands the depths of Esther's despair, but their relationship becomes a reflection of the complexities and sometimes toxic nature of female friendships in that era.
You're right. It's almost like they're both competing for the same limited space, both trapped by those societal expectations. Joan's ultimate fate is a stark reminder of the consequences of not finding a way to break free.
And then we have Dr. Nolan Esther, psychiatrist at the private hospital. She represents a turning point in Esther's journey, a beacon of hope in a system that often felt more oppressive than healing.
I was struck by how Dr. Nolan embodies a more empathetic and individualized approach to mental health care. She actually listens to Esther, validating her experiences and encouraging her to find her own voice. It's a stark contrast to the earlier treatment Esther received, which felt much more clinical and detached.
It highlights a shift in thinking about mental illness, moving away from those one-size-fits-all approaches towards a more patient-centered model. Dr. Nolan empowers Esther to take ownership of her recovery, encouraging her to explore her feelings and make choices that align with her true self.
It's like she's finally given permission to be her authentic self, imperfections and all. And through this process, we see those glimmers of hope. Her resilience shines through, and she starts writing again, reclaiming her creativity, and finding an outlet for her emotions.
That moment is so powerful. It signifies a reawakening, a reclaiming of her identity. It's like she's finding her way back to herself piece by piece.
Absolutely. But as we approach the end of the novel, Plath doesn't offer us a simple resolution. The ending is intentionally ambiguous, leaving us with questions about Esther's future and the possibility of the bell jar descending again.
It's a reminder that recovery isn't always linear. There will be setbacks, moments of doubt, and the potential for relapse. But it also underscores the importance of ongoing self-reflection and the need to continually challenge those internalized limitations.
It's an ending that stays with you long after you finish the book. It prompts you to think about your own life, your own struggles, and the ways in which you might be trapped by societal expectations or your own internal critic.
And ultimately, that's what makes The Bell Jar such a timeless and powerful work. It challenges us to confront those uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us, and to find the courage to break free from those constraints and embrace our authentic selves.
It really does make you think. It makes you wonder, have you been thinking about those themes even after finishing the book?
Oh, absolutely. It's like Plath just plants these ideas in your head and they just keep growing even after you close the book. Those questions about identity and pressures from society, the whole mental health thing, they all feel so personal.
Yeah, and it's interesting how she doesn't shy away from those darker parts of the experience. You know, those times when you feel completely lost and alone, they're tough to face, but also incredibly relatable.
It's that honesty that makes The Bell Jar so powerful. It's not about giving you easy answers or pretending mental illness is all sunshine and rainbows. It's about acknowledging the struggles and saying, hey, these experiences are valid, and in the end, there's a glimmer of hope.
You mentioned hope. Even though the ending is open-ended, there's this feeling that Esther is on the right track toward healing, even if it's not a straight line.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a finish line, and it's one that needs you to look inward and be open to challenging those things that hold you back inside and believing that you can grow.
For those who haven't read The Bell Jar yet, we really recommend you give it a shot. Plath's writing is captivating, her characters are unforgettable, and the story will stick with you long after you're done.
It's a challenging read, but definitely worth it. It gives you a glimpse into a specific time and place, but the themes it explores are universal and timeless. It can spark important conversations about mental health, what society expects of us, and finding who you really are in a world that often wants you to fit in.
Couldn't agree more. We've actually included a link in the show notes where you can purchase a copy of The Bell Jar, and by using our link, you're helping support our channel so we can keep making more deep dives like this one, exploring thought-provoking literature.
And hey, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any of our future episodes. We'll be looking at a wide range of books, from classic literature to current bestsellers, all with the goal of feeding your mind while you're on the go.
So before we finish up this deep dive into The Bell Jar, what's one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember?
I hope they're inspired to challenge those unseen forces that might be limiting their potential. Whether it's societal expectations or cultural norms or even their own internal beliefs, it's important to remember that they have the power to choose their own path.
Beautifully put. And remember, even when you feel trapped or suffocated like you're under that bell jar, there's always hope. There's always a way forward, even if it's not always clear or easy. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. We hope you found it insightful and got you thinking.
And be sure to check out that link in our show notes to get your own copy of this amazing novel and support our channel.
Until next time, keep those minds nourished and keep exploring the wonderful world of books.